Welcome back to the Texas Rangers pregame show driven by Geico. You know, saving you money on car insurance has been Geico's home run for over 75 years. Get a quote today with a proud partner of Major League Baseball at geico.com. Geico, so easy, a caveman can do it. And joining us here before the final game in this series with the Indians is the Rangers Director of Peak Performance, Josiah Igono. And Josiah, first off, welcome. And I would imagine that as people are listening to this, their first question is, what is a director of peak performance?
Matt, thanks for having me. So when you talk about peak performance, a lot of times the word psychology, that's the $6 word that a lot of athletes stay away from. But in essence, we're trying to be disruptors in the industry in terms of psychology. So we have a nice fusion of the academic, the clinical, and the practical, the applied side of psychology. So we seek to disrupt and wash away that negative stigma that comes with performing in high-level situations.
And when you're talking about Major League Baseball, you're talking about elite athletes who perform at a level that nobody really can understand. You can watch a baseball game, you can understand a baseball game, but standing in the batter's box and trying to hit a 96-mile-an-hour fastball, trying to throw a breaking pitch that's got 8 to 10 inches of break on it, these are very difficult things to do physically. But you so often hear people talk about the mental side of the game of baseball being the more challenging aspect for a lot of these guys. So do you identify players that need your guidance, or do guys come to you?
So I would say both. These are elite level performers. These guys have already been doing things using heuristics and decision-making processes all of their lives to get to this point. And many athletes, some of them have that reservation in terms of, nothing is wrong with me, so I don't need to go see a psychologist. But that stigma is changing, and it's one of those things where athletes do come to me, and I also bridge the gap as well. So again, we're trying to be disruptors in the industry in terms of that negative stigma. So yes.
So now, you and I had a conversation earlier today. It lasted about 20 minutes. I'd love to have all of that for our listeners. But your background is not in baseball. Your background's in football. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I didn't necessarily come up playing baseball. It's a sport that I respect and love now more than ever because of the history and the nuance of the game. But yeah, I played football in college, Arizona State University, under the late Bruce Snyder, and he was responsible for pretty much setting off the path that I would eventually go in the world of sports.
Now, are there aspects of the mental side of football that you can bring to baseball, or is it just completely different?
It's completely different. The biggest difference between a sport like football and a sport like baseball is that in football, you can impose your will physically on your opponent. If you're getting boat raced, or if you're not having a great day, I can impose my will physically on my opponent, so to speak. Whereas in baseball, you don't have that luxury. It's a very skilled sport, and you have to have the mental resolve to be able to power through negative situations, but you do it mentally first, preceding the skill.
I would imagine too, in an NFL season, you're playing 16 games. In a Major League Baseball season, you're playing 162 games. So that phrase that we hear so often from baseball players about staying on an even keel, it really is true, because if you give it that kind of football intensity, I don't know how long you're going to last during the season.
Absolutely, it's a great point. And when you're dealing with elite level athletes like that we have here, it's not necessarily the ability to rise to the occasion or be on an even keel or even respond to stress. It's actually your ability to recover. And that's a whole nother radio interview right there, but it's your ability to recover. It's your ability to hit that mental reset after a bad at-bat, after a bad outing, after a bad game, after a bad series. What is your capability to reset? That's the million-dollar question.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is your first year in this role with the big club, but it's your second stint with the Rangers. You had actually been with the team before, working exclusively with minor leaguers. How did you initially get involved with the Rangers organization?
So I was working with an organization called FCA, and for me, my personal mission statement in life, after I finished playing, was to challenge athletes mentally, to train them physically, and to encourage them spiritually. And I've done that at a number of different levels, being a pro sports chaplain, being a strength conditioning coach for for professional athletes, college athletes, and amateurs, and then also on the psychological realm as well. Being able to put in place mental skills programs, mental conditioning, and performance strategies for high-level performers. And so when I was working with FCA, someone approached me and said, "Hey, you need to meet one of my buddies that works in pro baseball, just to kind of align yourself more with your personal vision." And I did, and the rest is history.
All right, very good. For being the guest on our warm-up show today, Josiah Igono, the team's peak performance director, will be our guest at Bob's Steak and Chop House in Fort Worth. Josiah, we really appreciate the time and all the knowledge.
Matt, thank you for having me.
All right, stay tuned. Final game of this series with the Indians is coming up next, right here on the Texas Rangers Radio Network.